Welcome to the Mastery Club 10 Lessons Online Adventure. We are up to session number 7, the law of resonance and vibration. But before we leap into that, we'll create a little bridge with what we did the week before, all right? So, goals summary. Take your piece of paper and jot down what did you do in the last week? What did you achieve? What did you learn? And also, what are your plans for the next week? What are you going to do next? All right, so let's get the goal summary done. Secondly, we were talking about the law of polarity, which is that light-dark aspect to everything. So is there something in the last week for which you can see both the positive and the negative? Maybe at the time you only saw the positive or only saw the negative. Can you now see both sides of that experience? The more that you practice looking for the two sides, the more flexible your thinking is, the more resilient and flexible and real and grounded and holistic is your view. So it's a great thing to practice doing. The third thing is the visualization. So take a moment now to get relaxed. Let's take a breath. We'll hold the breath in again and then let it go, because that holding in space between the in-breath and the out-breath is apparently very, very balancing for the mind, the body, and the emotions, all right? So we'll do the breath and then visualize achieving our goal. Yay. All right, so close your eyes and do that deep breath in right from the abdomen. And hold the breath. And let it out again. And you can spend as long as you want doing this exercise. Just pause the video to spend as long as you want. Once you've relaxed yourself deeply, take a moment to visualize that goal being achieved. See yourself in the very moment that it's happening. What can you see? What can you feel? What can you hear? What can you touch? Is there a taste? Is there a smell? So make yourself as richly associated to that moment as you can. Make it real. And as you experience how lovely it is to have this thing that is so important to you come real, also allow your feelings of gratitude to bubble to the surface. All right. Allow that smile of gratitude. And then when you're ready, open your eyes and let's leap on with session number 7, the law of resonance and vibration. So first of all, let's have a conversation about laws. I'm sure you're familiar with the law of gravity, where we often think of it as things dropping, right? Things coming down. But actually the idea of up and down is a bit of a fallacy, because we live on a sphere, right? So in fact, there's only in and out. And so gravity is actually the effect of a force drawing an object to the center of that mass, right? And so when we tell each other and ourselves to stand up and sit down, that's actually quite incorrect. Really, it's more correct to say stand out and sit in. And the gravity being the law that draws, the force that draws things into the center of a mass. Okay, so a law is something that is immutable. That means it exists always, everywhere. There are no exceptions. Keep that in mind. The law of polarity that we spoke about last week is also a law. That means no exceptions. Everything is governed by the law of polarity. Everything has that two-sidedness. And now we come to the law of resonance and vibration. This is also a law. So first of all, let's look at the principle of vibration, because our entire world is vibrational. Everything has a vibration. Everything, whether it's a solid, a liquid, or a gas. So remember when we saw the Powers of 10 video and we went right inside the hand and saw everything vibrating? That's the key word, vibrating, right? Everything vibrates at its really molecular subatomic level. Whether we can see that movement, that vibration or not, everything is vibrating. And everything not only vibrates, but also makes its own sound. Everything has a note that is unique to it, right? You might be familiar with the idea that crystal makes a sound, and that sound is a vibration. You can probably hear it. Whenever we speak, our sounds are vibrations, right? And if you hum, you can really feel that vibration. So it kind of go, you can feel that vibration right through your body. If you've ever taken a leaf and folded it and kind of blown through it, and you'll also experience that vibratory aspect, right? Bells are great for giving that sense of vibration, and crystal bowls and all sorts of things. And so what's interesting about this vibratory aspect of everything is the law of resonance, okay, which is that things of a similar vibration will join in with each other. They'll kind of harmonize together. And this is why I gave the example in the Mastery Club that when an opera singer hits a really high note, if there is a chandelier in the opera house that has a very lots of very fine crystal in it, when that crystal hears its note as the opera singer hits those very high notes, the crystals will sometimes start to shake as well, so that they are kind of joining in with the music, with the note that the opera singer is singing. Our emotions are vibrational as well. Have you ever experienced shivering with fear, that trembling? That's a vibration. Or being so angry that you were shaking, that's another vibration. Perhaps you felt really light and joyous and enthusiastic, and that's a different kind of emotional vibration. In fact, let's have a look at this. This is a way of defining emotion as actually energy in motion. So it's just simply energy moving through our bodies. And when we're in a really low state, like apathy, we don't care about anything and we're just lying around on the couch in inertia, not moving, it's a low, heavy state and a slow frequency, a slow vibration. Whereas love and enthusiasm are right at the other end of the scale. They're a very high frequency, a high vibration. And all the other emotions kind of fit somewhere in the middle. And interestingly, no matter where we live around the world, different cultures, different religions, we all experience the same range of emotions and we express them very similarly. It's as if there are universal kind of patterns, right? Happiness goes with a smile, right? Sadness goes with a droopy face, you know. Anger goes with a frowning face, a red face. And these are universal patterns that can be observed anywhere. And so when we kind of muck around with the pattern, it doesn't feel right, it doesn't work. So for example, if you're asked to walk around looking up but frowning, that's really hard to do, you know, because we kind of usually frown when we're looking down because it's a kind of downward heavy state, right? And the same with the opposite of that, right? So if we were looking down and smiling, well, we sort of can do more easily, but it just doesn't feel right. It's not very sustainable. It feels odd. It's incongruent. You know, congruent is when things match. So when our thoughts and our feelings and behaviors all match up. And so when we're looking down and trying to smile, again, that's incongruent because looking down is a heavy state and smiling is an up sort of state. In fact, negative body language goes most easily or comfortably even with negative thoughts. And positive body language goes most easily or comfortably with positive thoughts. I remember once seeing a woman who had this really frowny sort of forehead, and it was kind of obvious what she was thinking most of the time. I mean, I didn't know the detail of it, but I knew it must be some kind of negative, limiting, depressing sort of thoughts, because it's not possible to end up with a bright, cheerful face when you're thinking negative thoughts, and it's not possible to have a laughter-lined, smiling, happy face if you're going around thinking negative, depressing thoughts all the time. All of this points to the fact that we have what's called a mind-body loop. There's a connection between the mind and the body. But what's interesting about this is that what we do with our mind affects the body, and what we do with our body affects the mind. So we can always change it if we want to. If we're feeling depressed and down, if we take ourselves out in the fresh air for a walk, just that action of walking will start to affect our thinking, and we'll start to think more positive, more optimistic thoughts. On the other hand, if we've been feeling pretty fine, but we find ourselves in a cramped, slumped position, we cut off the oxygen to the brain and so forth, we might actually end up starting to not feel so positive anymore. But isn't it great to know that we're in charge of it, that what we do can make quite a big difference to either way, our thinking or our body. In fact, here's something really interesting. Some studies were done that found that when someone put a pen in their mouth like this, and they were shown certain pictures, they would register a more negative response to the pictures than when the pen went in their mouth like this. Why is that? Because this way is a little bit, facially, it's a little bit like smiling, whereas this is kind of closer to a frown. Isn't it interesting? So these were called facial feedback studies, and literally what we do with our face affects what we think. Some other studies were done where people were told, they were sent out to an event like a party, and they were told they had to smile all the way through the whole evening, whether they felt like it or not. And interestingly enough, when they came out of the party at the other end, the people who'd had to smile reported more enjoyment of the event than the people who didn't, who just did whatever they did. Another really interesting point about this is that our habits make us or break us. What we feed grows, literally, whether it's our bodies or plants or our attitudes. What we feed grows. And the more that we do something, the more that we myelinate those pathways in the brain. Remember, we spoke about that? We create much easier pathways through our nerve cells the more often we do something. And so the more that we have these cheerful sort of thoughts, appreciative thoughts, and smiles and things like that, the more that we can influence our actual experience, our actual attitude. Just as everything has its own note, remember this, so do we. So what creates our note? It's not exactly like that, is it? But we put out a frequency, we put out a vibration from our essence. It's our essence, it's the who we are. And what determines that vibration? Our thoughts, right? Our thoughts set up a vibrational pattern of frequency through our bodies and through our feelings, through our emotions, right? And that goes out into the world and other people can experience it. And so what determines that exact note? It's our dominant thought. It's the one we think most of the time, right? So somebody who's constantly thinking depressed sort of thoughts will have a depressed sort of note, right? Someone who's thinking frenetic thoughts, I haven't got time, I haven't got enough time, they'll put out that kind of a note. Someone who's thinking relaxed thoughts, there's plenty of time. Everything's working out fine. It'll all be great. I'm a good person, I'm a lovable person. No matter what I've done or not done, I'm worthy of love. Like those kind of thoughts will create that kind of frequency. It seems to me that a healer might have a dominant thought like, you look like you're in pain, can I help? Or a tyrant might have the dominant thought, do it my way, right? So you can recognize that we would probably all have this dominant thought that determines our frequency. And so people are a little bit like radio stations, right? So we're each putting out this music, this dominant note, this frequency. And other people pick up on it because that resonance I was talking about between things of the same frequency. Well, other people pick up our note, and if it feels comfortable to them, they kind of like to come and hang out with us. Have you heard the expression, birds of a feather flock together? So often you'll see people with similar values because that's like a frequency hanging out together. Like hippies, they all hang out together, and billionaires hang out together, and punks hang out together, and so there's all these different kinds of groups that have shared values and a shared probably idea, and a shared note, and they kind of are drawn to be together. And we're drawn to be with that note that's like us because it's comfortable. In fact, even a child that's perhaps been abused or something like that will seek the family that is abusive over and above the kind stranger often, because the abuse is familiar. So we tend to be drawn to what's familiar and what's comfortable to us because we feel most comfortable around it, right? But opposites also occur, don't they? So while we're drawn to the people who are like us because that's comfortable, we're also drawn to people who are not like us because that's stimulating and challenging and it has us grow. And that's why marriage is often a combination of similar values and differences, big differences. And those differences create the chemistry, the attraction, right? In a way, we could say that by the law of resonance and vibration, we are drawn to similar values, right? And by the law of magnetism to opposites, right? For the purpose of growth. But the fact is that we have a dual nature. We are both light and dark, and we seek both supportive and challenging experiences because we grow through both. And we can choose which we want to respond to and how we want to respond, right? Bottom line with this create your reality stuff is that what you think about, you bring about. So just be conscious of how you're thinking and what you're bringing into your life. So how is all of this relevant to our goals? Well, if you think about it, your goal is this very important thing to you, this worthy experience that probably has a pretty high vibration because it represents you growing, you realizing your potential, yeah? And so if we're going to achieve that goal, we have to resonate with it, right? We have to be in vibrational harmony with our goal. We have to vibrate at a similar frequency. So just imagine if you're playing football and you're halfway through the match and you're losing. What might your vibrational frequency be like? It might be getting a bit slow and heavy and low, right? You might be starting to think, oh, we're going to lose. Oh, I knew it. Right? Whereas winning is in a celebratory vibration, right? It's in a more up frequency and it's not in harmonious vibration with thoughts like we're going to lose. It's pretty obvious, right? I remember watching my daughter's soccer team once, and it was really quite obvious the moment at which they gave up, because it was something in their body language and the whole energy of the team just dropped. Even though they were only a little way into the match, you could just see they had given up. So a very profound thing has been said is that the game isn't over, or you don't lose when the siren goes, you lose when you give up. So what are your thoughts and feelings about your goal and achieving your goal? Are you going around kind of doing this, you know, you've got the high goal that you're aiming for, but there's not very good feelings about it. So you're kind of going like, well, yeah, I can imagine myself achieving that, you know, and it's not very congruent. So wherever possible, we want to try and line it up so that we're in that frequency of appreciation and gratitude and celebration of the goal that we want to achieve, as if it's happening, rather than in the appearance of, oh gosh, at the moment it looks like we're losing, or it looks like it's not going to happen, or it looks like it's way off, or whatever, because it can look like that right up until the end. Okay, so let's do a little bit of detective work. Let's go and have a look at your strategies, how you empower yourself and disempower yourself. Interesting question, huh? I want you to think about a time when you felt stuck and you stayed stuck, right? When things weren't working and it just got worse, right? What I'd like you to do is share these on the forum. We'll go there and share these examples back and forth. But for example, it might be that you stayed stuck by complaining, by stamping around the house and slamming doors, by sulking, by watching TV, by eating sugar, you know. So what did you do? Have a think about what are the ways, what are your strategies for keeping yourself feeling bad, feeling stuck, feeling helpless, hopeless, right? Because it's just good to be aware. Remember what we were saying about the power of self-knowledge. Okay, and then turn over a new leaf and let's have a conversation about what do you do when you empower yourself? What are your strategies for shifting that state, for getting yourself out of stuckness, right? So for example, is it, and it often is, I think, activity, that you just get up and go for a walk, or you, if you're an adult, clean the house. I know kids don't do that. Or you go ride your bike, or you play with the ball, or you call a friend, go to the movies, change the input, the ideas that are coming in. So what do you do that shifts your state out of being stuck into feeling better? Sometimes we think that if we're feeling bad, that feeling kind of happened to us. And so we're stuck. And we just have to kind of wait it out until that feeling goes away. But you know, have you ever had the feeling where, had the experience where you've been feeling stuck and you've been feeling miserable, and then the doorbell rings and it's someone that you really like and they've come to visit, or the phone rings, or someone gives you an opportunity to go out to a concert, or something unexpected happens and suddenly your energy shifts like that. And you've got lots of energy and you've got lots of enthusiasm and sparkle, and that bad mood is just gone, right? So we know that actually we're in charge of our feelings. We're the boss, right? And sometimes, you know, it's not easy to make the change. Sometimes we actually want to stay stuck, and that's human. It's okay. But we do know that actually we could shift it. We can change what we're thinking, what we're saying to ourselves. That's the number one strategy. We can get ourselves physically up, go for the walk. That's another number one strategy. Get that body moving because of the body-mind connection. And one of your real surefire ways of shifting your mood is gratitude. If you can get into a state of gratitude, if you can find things to be grateful for, that's a bit of a looking on the bright side, or appreciating even the not so pleasant things, that's more masterful, right? Then that will really make a big difference to your state. Some people use the strategy called act as if, which I've talked about in the Mastery Club, where Nina's Aunt Liz goes to a modelling competition thing, and she is surrounded by people who are overwhelming her. She's kind of scared, and she tells herself to act as if she is absolutely totally deserves to be there and has the potential to win. So she just kind of squares her shoulders and lifts her chin, you know. That's all part of acting as if, is what we do with our body. And she goes to the people who are in charge and she speaks to them as if she has the right to be there. So acting as if is another great strategy for making a shift in our emotional state. You know, another really interesting way of changing emotional state. Have you ever watched the Maori haka? So just before the Maori football teams go out to play, they all get together and dance this traditional kind of war dance. And it's really about getting into their strength and their power and their dominance. And it's quite confronting, you know, if you're on the other end and receiving it. You can have a look at some haka on YouTube. It's fantastic. They get their eyes really starey and they thump their legs and they stamp their feet, and they're really, really very much empowering themselves. And you can do things like that as well if you're up for it, if you want to change your state. A quick word about some of those times when we don't feel like it. Remember what we were saying about the myelination of the brain? Well, there's another interesting thing about the brain, and that is that all of our emotions release chemicals in our bodies. And sometimes we actually become addicted to our own chemicals, you know. We actually, if we're feeling bad, we become so used to the feel bad chemical going through our body that when it stops, we sort of miss it and we want more of it. Sounds weird, I know, but bodies work in that kind of a way. And so we can sometimes deliberately put ourselves back into that feel bad space so that we can have that emotional, that chemical hit again. Which is why wherever you can, go for the walk, think something useful, so that you can create the chemicals that change which chemicals are being released in your brain, and change which pathways are being triggered off in your brain, so that you have a more appreciative and enjoyable experience of life. So what's the vibe we want to be in when to achieve our goals and things that are important to us? A really wonderful, high frequency, appreciative sort of vibe, a celebratory vibe, right? So here's something that can be useful in helping you to manage that. Okay, this is called the success spiral. See, we all start out here with infinite potential. So let's supposing that we want to make something, invent something, write a book, build something, whatever it is that we want to do, we have infinite potential. So let's say we decide to take action, we make a start, and then we see a result, right? We make whatever we make, do whatever we do, and we see a result. And let's say it's not exactly quite right. It's a bit wonky. It didn't work. We kind of didn't quite achieve everything we wanted to achieve. This is the important part of this loop, and that is feedback. So how do we talk to ourselves about what the result that we have achieved? You know, do we say, oh, that was dumb, stupid me, I won't bother doing that again? See what happens when we say, I won't bother doing that again? We reduce our potential in a sense, right? In other words, we don't activate as much of our potential, so that next time we take action, maybe we do something smaller. We don't try for as big a goal. We're not as confident. We sort of shrink a little bit. So this is a spiral, which, as you can see, we can spiral up or down depending on how we're talking to ourselves. So hopefully this session has given you some ideas about how you can support yourself in developing some strategies that will keep your vibration, your frequency in a really constructive and useful place, so that you stay persistent on your goals, so that you don't give up, other than the little ups and downs that we all experience, because we all do. But remember, it's okay to fall down 6 times so long as you get up 7 times, right? So keep hanging in there. And if you find that in your success spiral looping that things haven't worked out as well as you want, then go looking for what could be done differently. You know, ask for help, attend a class, really reflect on what you've done, and I'm sure you'll be able to identify what you could do that would tweak your experience so that you're more successful next time. The best way to experience success in your goal is to actually be in motion towards it. And that's a law. There is another law, which is the interattractiveness law, Newton's law of interattractiveness. And that is just simply by being in motion towards one's goal, we actually start to create a kind of gravity between it and us, and we're drawn together, right? So I wish you a wonderful week in taking action towards your goal and drawing it to you. And please visit me on the forum. Share your strategies, both for disempowering yourself and for empowering yourself, because it's good to be self-aware for both of those examples. And also, let's encourage each other as well in our goals, and just share where we're at and what's next and how we're dealing with the challenges. Okay? Remember too the attitude of gratitude, which is a great way to shift your energy, get into a better kind of vibe, a better frequency. Something else you might like to do is to just play with that mind-body loop through this week and just observe what happens if you're feeling down and you shift your body. Or if you're thinking something and you deliberately change it, how does it affect your body? So just have a bit of a play with that, and I'd love to hear how you go with it. So, create a great week, and I look forward to seeing you next week for lesson number 8. You have to become a new person.